The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF.
I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I am here today with Carey Matthiessen for this episode of Pulse School. She's a senior seed analyst with 2020 Seed Labs. So we're going to be talking about germination rates, and we're going to be talking about diseases and how they might affect germination rates and what can be done about it. So welcome, Carey. It's great to see you.
Great. Thanks, Amber. Thanks for having us. We're looking forward to having a good discussion about pulse quality.
Yeah, so let's dive right into it. What were we looking at last year in pulse germination rates, and what are we looking at going into the 2025 season?
Right, so last year across the prairies we had a lot of drought, and we also had some situations of heat blast in different regions. So that really affects pulses because they're so susceptible to mechanical damage. So going into the fall, after the first handling of peas, specifically peas here, what we found was that quality was pretty stable. Our germinations were up, in the 90s with just a little bit of mechanical damage. But as you continue to handle that seed through the season, cleaning it, moving it around, augering it, then that tends to amplify the mechanical damage.
Right, and let's talk about that mechanical damage a bit, because I think that's something that doesn't get talked about quite enough when it comes to peas, and especially when it comes to germination. So what are some things that growers can do to maybe kind of shelter themselves from that mechanical damage?
Right. Okay. So I think the very first thing that growers can do is be aware that it's a problem. So slowing down the rates of their combines and limiting how much drop that their peas are experiencing throughout their whole harvest conditions is kind of the first way to set it up. We can't control that it's going to be hot, and we can't control that our peas are going to be dry. But what we can do is really slow down that handling and try to reduce some of that damage that's coming in. So right off the bat, we just want to be aware that this is an issue that's going to touch you down the line. After that, once we get that first movement of seed in there, really pay attention to your test results. Because even at a 95% germination, 3% that is mechanical damage can easily turn into 15 or 20% after you handle that seed 2 or 3 times. So really paying attention to what your seed test results are telling you in terms of mechanical damage can help you to reduce some of that damage in handling.
And how much does the mechanical damage affect vigor? Like, is there a large difference between germination and vigor when it comes to mechanical damage?
What we generally see is that the vigor follows the germination in mechanical damage. So meaning that if your germination is 90% and you have 10% mechanical damage, your vigor tends to be around that 90%. But as your germination drops, so does your vigors, but they tend to drop at relatively the same rates, unless there's more underlying conditions that happened out in the field, like maybe we had an early frost. Then you would start to see some difference in the germ and vigor rates.
That's good to know. And so let's talk a little bit about diseases then, and what we're seeing going into this seeding season, and what producers might be watching out for.
So I think top of mind these days with producers are diseases that affect the root systems. So fusarium is still going to be an issue with peas, causing some root rot, and also aphanomyces. So those are kind of the two, I would say, like the main issues that we're looking at is those root rots. And also ascochytus. So ascochytus has been around for a long time, but that's still a disease that many producers are watching out for.
And that's one producers can actually seed treat for, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So how much do you guys recommend doing seed trim, and do you think growers can go without it? Is it something that you're like, no, this is something you got to be doing?
Well, it depends on the severity of your disease. I mean, I think as a whole we always recommend treating your seed. I think that the benefits of seed treatment, especially going into some unknown conditions, is it going to be very cool in the spring? How long is that period of cool, wet soils are going to be? So I think that, yes, we would always recommend treating, but at the same time, knowing where your disease levels are so that you're making really good decisions about what type of seed treatment that you're using.
Right. And then how much, when you look at that lab test result, how much are the germination and vigor rates going to impact decisions made, such as seeding rates or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so very much so. I mean, a 1,000 kernel weight combined with your germination result or your vigor result is going to help you determine at what rate you should be seeding. So I know a lot of growers will compensate for mechanical damage by upping their seeding rate by 10 or 15%. So it's really critical to know where
look at those results.
to really look at those results and to use them in determining where your seeding rates are going to be in the spring.
That's great. And is there anything that you recommend or words of encouragement you want to offer out to growers as we go into this 2025 growing season?
Well, I guess it's, you never know what's going to happen. We've been in a drought cycle, but I mean that can break at any time. And I think that the weather patterns have become so predictable. The more knowledge you can have about the quality of your seed, just the better, more informed decisions that you're going to make. So get as much information as you can and make a good decision for some good agronomy and going into the spring.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And that was Carey Matthiessen on Real Agriculture.